My fiancé's secretary caught the bouquet at my colleague's wedding. She knelt on one knee shyly in front of my fiancé and proposed to him. "Sheldon, will you marry me?" My usually aloof fiancé unexpectedly softened, his voice tender as he said yes. Then, with heartfelt affection, he slid the engagement ring that was supposed to be mine onto her finger. As everyone cheered, the secretary threw her arms around him and winked at me defiantly. Instead of getting mad, I laughed and took the lead in encouraging them. The mood's perfect. Why not seal it with a kiss? Don't forget to set a wedding date, so I can prepare my gift. As soon as the words fell, a chorus of excited shouts rose from the wedding guests. "Kiss! Kiss!" Hearing this, the smile on my Sheldon's face froze for a moment. After clearing his throat awkwardly, he quickly changed the subject. "Since it's Lisa's big day, winter, and I won't hog the spotlight. We can catch up later." Sheldon's fake smile faded as he pulled me aside, his expression turning cold. "Nora, don't go too far. Isn't it just a hot part of the wedding? Why are you being so sarcastic?" I almost laughed out loud at Sheldon's shamelessness. What kind of decent fiancé openly flirted with another woman right in front of his? Especially someone like Sheldon, the cold-faced CEO who wouldn't even crack a joke at work. Before I could respond, his secretary, Winter, spoke up first. "Nora, you've misunderstood Sheldon. I've always liked Sheldon, but I know someone as excellent as him is out of my league today. Sheldon was just being kind, helping me fulfill my little dream of confessing to him." Winter deliberately showed off the engagement ring on her finger as she spoke. "A week ago, I found an exquisite ring box in Sheldon's suit pocket. I knew the brand. It specialized in custom engagement rings." I was ecstatic as I held up the ring box, expecting a proposal from Sheldon after 8 years. Ironically, the ring didn't even fit my finger. No wonder Sheldon looked so flustered that day. He then explained, "The designer must have messed up your ring size. I'll have it adjusted later." I was so deeply in love with him that I took his word for everything. But now, seeing the ring fit perfectly on Winter's finger, like it was tailor-made for her, I wasn't a fool. How could I have missed it? When Sheldon slid the ring onto Winter's hand, everything became clear. I wasn't the one he intended to propose to. Noticing my gaze fixed on her hand, Winter immediately looked flustered and started to take off the ring. "I am so sorry, Nora. This ring must be yours, right? Sheldon only lent it to me just now to go along with my act. I'll return it to you now." I dropped my gaze and said coolly, "No need. You keep it. I can't stand using things others have touched." Hearing this, Sheldon's face turned sour. "Nora, what do you mean by that?" I lazily glanced at him and said flatly, "Exactly what it sounds like. Besides, wasn't that ring originally meant for Winter?" A flicker of panic crossed Sheldon's eyes. He quickly avoided my gaze and snapped, "Nora, stop making things up. I already told you the designer messed up the size. It was just a coincidence that the ring fit. Winter, if you're upset, I'll have another custom made for you. All right?" A chill ran down my spine. Sheldon took the meaning of an engagement ring so lightly, so casually, just like he treated our relationship now. Watching Sheldon go to such lengths to defend Winter, I suddenly felt tired. It all seemed so pointless. I waved him off dismissively and said with indifference, "There's no need for all this, Sheldon. Let's just call off the engagement." Sheldon was startled, blinking rapidly. After a long pause, he asked incredulously, "Nora, what did you just say?" I've always loved him dearly, and the thought of being apart from him terrified me. On the other hand, Sheldon would threaten me with breaking up every time he and I had a big fight over Winter. He had me by the throat, forcing me to yield repeatedly. But all I ever gained was a series of deep wounds. Winter abruptly grabbed my hand, putting on a show of being reasonable, and hastily advised, "Nora, don't be impulsive. Let's talk this over. You've been with Sheldon for 8 years. How could you possibly bear to give up on this relationship? Besides, Sheldon is already the vice president of the company. Now, if you fall out with him, aren't you worried it will affect your career in the future?" Hearing this, Sheldon stood up straight with a smug look on his face. He adjusted a suit cuff and looked at me reproachfully. "Winter is right. I've provided you with everything you need for all these years. What more could you possibly want? Nora, that's enough. Stop making a scene. There are so many people here. Aren't you embarrassed? If our colleagues notice, how am I supposed to face them at work? Sheldon put on an air of superiority, as if I owed my job to him. But he seemed to have forgotten that I had accompanied him to that cramped 10-square-meter basement where we were struggling to start our business. It was I who accompanied the client to drink until I got a bleeding ulcer. To help him get promoted and secure the project, I chose to stand by his side resolutely. When everyone else dismissed and looked down on him, a bitter smile twisted my lips as tears pricked at my eyes. After 8 years of devotion, what had I gained? Sheldon, if you feel ugly, I will go back now and not disgrace you here. Don't worry. There's no future between us anymore. Let's part amicably. Perhaps my tone was too flat. As Sheldon watched me force back my tears, a rare trace of panic crossed his face. Nora, I didn't mean to. Noticing that Sheldon was starting to warm up to me, Winter bit her lip in frustration. Her eyes instantly turned red, and she looked like she was about to cry. Nora, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault for being too selfish today and hurting your relationship with Sheldon. I'll go and explain everything to everyone right now. At worst, they'll laugh at me. As long as the two of you are fine, nothing else matters to me. Winter had an expression of enduring humiliation, as if she had made a great decision and pretended to walk into the crowd. Winter, don't go. Without thinking, Sheldon grabbed her hand. He turned to me, his eyes filled with impatience. Nora, why are you pushing Winter to this point? She's just starting her career. What if she is ostracized because of this? Sheldon's words made me feel sick. Looking at him, protecting Winter behind him like a treasure, it seemed like I was the one who broke up the couple. Someone behind us suddenly called out teasingly, Mr. Sheldon, you and Ms. Winter are the company's next golden couple. Drink a few more glasses today and share some of that luck with us lonely singles. Sheldon smiled unconsciously when he heard this. We'll be right there. Sheldon adjusted his emotions and responded loudly. He then wrapped his arm around Winter's slender waist, brushing past me as they walked straight towards the banquet, as if to him, I was merely an insignificant person. I knew that a lot of people in the company were shipping Sheldon and Winter as a couple. Yet Sheldon never stopped the rumors from spreading. He even enjoyed this ambiguous relationship with Winter. But once, when Sheldon gave me a ride to work and was seen by a coworker, my coworker gossiped, asking if Sheldon and I were dating. Sheldon swiftly deducted the colleague's salary for a month, warning him not to speak recklessly and disrupt the company's atmosphere. From then on, Sheldon never gave me a ride again. He claimed it was to avoid rumors and insisted that I take the subway instead. Winter's laughter kept drifting into my ears. She nestled in Sheldon's arms, her cheeks flushed red with shyness. In the past, if I'd seen Sheldon being so intimate with another woman, I would have confronted her. In the past, if I had seen Sheldon being so intimate with another woman, I would have confronted him. I would have lost my mind, yelled, demanded explanations, even begged for some justification that made sense. But today? No. Something inside me had broken, and there was no way to fix it. I watched them walk together, laughing like a couple straight out of a cheap romance. Winter's cheeks were flushed, and Sheldon looked comfortable, almost relaxed, by her side. A perfect scene, worthy of applause, or a bitter laugh. I took a deep breath and returned to the hall, but not to join the celebration or pretend everything was fine. I grabbed my purse and started walking toward the exit. Before I could reach the door, a colleague, clearly curious, stopped me. Nora, did you see Sheldon and Winter? They look so cute together, don't you think? Cute. The word echoed in my mind. Cute. As if I were just a spectator in this story, a passive observer of something that was, in reality, a slap in my face. I looked at her with a cynical smile and replied, "Cute is an interesting word. I'd call it pathetic." She blinked, confused, but I didn't wait for more questions. I left the hall without looking back. Outside, the night air was cold, but I felt like I could breathe for the first time in hours. I took out my phone, opened a ride app, and ordered a car. While I waited, I thought about everything that had happened over the past years. 8 years of sacrifices, veiled humiliations, and empty excuses. 8 years of believing we were building something together, only to discover that, in the end, I was just a stepping stone for Sheldon to reach his own glory. When the car arrived, I got in without saying a word to the driver. I just asked to be taken home. During the ride, my thoughts were a whirlwind. Part of me wanted to disappear, to run away to some place where no one knew my name or my story. But another part, a part one barely recognized, was furious. A cold, calculated anger was growing inside me. When I got home, I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. For months, I had been keeping evidence of how Sheldon conducted his business. Contracts, compromising emails, messages he thought no one would ever see. It wasn't something I had ever intended to use, but now everything felt different. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had treated me as disposable, as if my presence were nothing more than a convenience for him. I spent the next few hours organizing everything, every document, every message, every detail. I wasn't doing this to hurt him out of revenge, but to protect myself. He had already made it clear that he wouldn't hesitate to discard me if it served his interests. I couldn't let him walk away unscathed. The next morning, I went to the office as usual. Sheldon arrived a little later, accompanied by Winter, both of them radiant. I watched them from a distance, keeping my expression neutral. When he finally saw me, he hesitated for a moment, but then approached with that fake smile of his. "Nora, can we talk?" I knew he didn't actually want to talk. He wanted control. He wanted to silence me, to convince me that everything that had happened was a misunderstanding and that, somehow, I was the one overreacting. "Sure, Sheldon," I replied calmly, following him into his office. As soon as the door closed, he started. "Look, about yesterday, I know it was uncomfortable for you, but you have to understand it was just a joke. Winter doesn't mean anything to me. A joke." I interrupted, my voice cold as ice. "Sheldon, you proposed to another woman. You put a ring that was supposed to be mine on her finger. That's not a joke. It's an insult." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't give him a chance. "And furthermore, you're standing here defending Winter as if she's the victim. But who is it that helped you get to where you are? Who stood by your side when no one else believed in you? Who sacrificed years of their life, their career, their health, so you could succeed?" He was silent, but I continued. "Sheldon, you didn't just betray me. You disrespected me. And you know what? It's over. I don't want this anymore. I don't want you anymore." He tried to argue, but I had already made up my mind. That afternoon, I handed in my resignation letter. I didn't need him or the company anymore. I used the evidence I had collected to ensure he couldn't harm me in the future. I walked out of the office with my head held high, feeling a freedom I hadn't felt in years. Sheldon could carry on with Winter, but deep down, I knew he would never have what I had given him. Loyalty, true love, and unwavering dedication. As I walked down the street for the first time in a long time, I smiled. I had wasted 8 years of my life with Sheldon, but I wouldn't waste another second. After leaving the office that day, the feeling of freedom was overwhelming. Every step I took away from Sheldon felt like shedding years of weight off my shoulders. But I knew starting over wouldn't be easy. I was beginning from scratch, with no job and none of the connections I had built in his company. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt in control. That night, at home, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea and began listing my skills and experiences. I had learned so much during the years I spent by Sheldon's side, how to negotiate contracts, manage teams, and handle difficult clients. Though he would never admit it, much of his success came from my work behind the scenes. It was time to use all of that to my advantage. In the following days, I started applying for new positions, not at traditional companies, but at startups and small businesses that valued innovation and boldness, concepts Sheldon would never understand. I also reached out to former clients I had helped win over for Sheldon's company. Some were surprised to hear I no longer worked there, but many were eager to continue working with me, no matter where I landed. Within weeks, I was hired by a fast-growing tech startup. The environment was dynamic, energetic, and the complete opposite of the rigid office I had left behind. They gave me the freedom to lead important projects, and for the first time in years, I felt like my work was truly valued. On top of that, some of Sheldon's former clients started reaching out directly, asking for help on projects his company had neglected. The real turning point came when one of those clients, an influential investor, made me an unexpected offer. He wanted me to use my expertise to start my own consultancy. The idea was intimidating, but he was willing to fund the launch, convinced of my potential. After much thought, I took the leap. This was my chance to build something that was truly mine. Over time, my consultancy began to grow. I hired a small team of talented, passionate professionals, many of whom had left Sheldon's company out of dissatisfaction with his leadership. Together, we started securing significant contracts and building a strong reputation in the market. The irony? Many of the companies that had distanced themselves from Sheldon's firm began working with me, citing my more transparent and innovative approach. Meanwhile, rumors about Sheldon and Winter's situation started to circulate. Apparently, things weren't going as smoothly as they seemed. Without me to balance the business, Sheldon's company began facing serious issues. He lost several key contracts to my consultancy, and clients started questioning his ethics and leadership. Winter, whom he had hastily promoted to prominent roles, proved to be incompetent, creating even more problems. It wasn't long before she left the company, taking what little was left of Sheldon's damaged reputation with her. One day, as I reviewed documents in my new office, I received an unexpected email. It was from Sheldon. He wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss a potential partnership. I laughed as I read the message. He was desperate, trying to salvage what was left of his company. But I didn't need him. I politely declined and returned to what truly mattered, my own success. Months later, I was invited to a networking event filled with entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders. As I mingled, making new connections, I spotted a familiar figure in the corner of the room. Sheldon. He looked worn down, as if the weight of all his poor decisions had finally caught up to him. He noticed me and hesitated before trying to approach. But before he could say anything, I was called to the stage to speak about my consultancy's growth and my innovative work in the industry. His expression as I spoke was one of pure disbelief. At the end of the event, as I chatted with other entrepreneurs, Sheldon finally worked up the courage to approach. "Nora, can we talk?" he asked, his voice more humble than I had ever heard. I looked at him, remembering all the years of pain and sacrifice I had endured by his side. But now I was a different person. I smiled politely and replied, "There's nothing for us to talk about, Sheldon. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And you? I hope you've learned something from all of this." I left him there without waiting for a response and returned to my conversation. I didn't need Sheldon, his apologies, or any remnants of the past. I had built something for myself, something solid, and I knew the best was yet to come. That day marked the definitive closure of a painful chapter in my life. It was no longer about what I had lost, but about what I had gained. And now, every step I took was toward my own future, a bright future where I was the protagonist of my own story.
I never asked my parents for money, but when they saw my $14 million bank balance, they screamed, "How dare you hide this from us?" I smiled and said, "Remember when you kicked me out?" I never wanted their approval. Or at least, that's what I told myself as I stood in my penthouse office, staring at the city lights below. The email that had just popped up on my screen was from my younger sister. "Mom and Dad are struggling. They need help with the mortgage. I know you probably can't afford much, but anything would help." I let out a bitter laugh. If only they knew. 10 years ago, at the age of 18, I stood in our cramped living room as my father's face turned red with rage. "Art school. You want to waste your life on art school." He waved my acceptance letter like it was poisonous. "We didn't raise you to be this foolish Sarah." My mother sat quietly on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. She always stayed quiet during these moments, letting my father's anger fill the room, while she disappeared into herself. "I got a scholarship," I said firmly, though my voice trembled. "And I saved enough from my part-time jobs to cover the rest." Ridiculous. My father crumpled the letter. "You're going to business school like your sister. End of discussion." But for once in my life, it wasn't the end. I stood my ground. No, that single word changed everything. My father's face went from red to purple. Then get out. If you think you're smart enough to make it on your own, go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you fail. I packed my bags that night, hands shaking but resolve firm. My sister Malene watched from her doorway, eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. You're really leaving. I have to, I whispered, stuffing clothes into my duffel bag. I can't live someone else's life anymore. My mother appeared in my doorway as I was zipping up my bag. For a moment, I thought she might stop me, might finally stand up to my father. Instead, she pressed an envelope into my hand. Your grandmother wanted you to have this when the time was right. I think that's now. Inside was a letter and a key to a small safety deposit box. I didn't open the letter until I was sitting in my cheap motel room that night, trying not to cry. My dearest granddaughter, it began. If you're reading this, you've finally chosen your own path. I always knew you would. The key enclosed belongs to Box 247 at First National Bank. Inside, you'll find what you need to start your journey. Remember, true art isn't just about creating beauty. It's about seeing value where others see nothing. Love, Grandma Rose. The next morning, I opened that safety deposit box with trembling fingers. Inside was a collection of what looked like old jewelry, some papers, and another letter. These pieces belonged to my grandmother, the note explained. She was an art collector in the 1920s. Most people think they're costume jewelry, but they're not. Find Marcus Chen at Golden Age Antiques. He'll know their true worth. I almost dropped the box when Marcus finished his evaluation. The costume jewelry was actually a collection of rare Art Deco pieces worth over $400,000. But more valuable than the money was Marcus's offer. I see you understand art's true value. How would you like to learn the business? That was the beginning. Marcus became my mentor, teaching me everything about the art and antique world. I learned how to spot genuine pieces, how to negotiate, how to build relationships with collectors. While my family thought I was probably waiting tables or living on the street, I was building a network that would become the foundation of my empire. Within 2 years, I opened my first gallery. By year 5, I had 3 locations and a reputation for finding hidden gems in the art world. Now, 10 years later, I own the largest private art dealership network in the country, with a personal net worth of over $14 million. My family never knew. They never bothered to check. The only photos they saw of me were carefully curated social media posts showing a modest apartment and a simple life. My sister occasionally sent condescending messages about job openings at her company in case you need real work. I kept the illusion going because it was easier than dealing with their sudden interest in my life. But now, staring at my sister's email about our parents' mortgage, I realized the time for illusions was over. I picked up my phone and called my sister. Melina, bring Mom and Dad to my office tomorrow. I think it's time we talked. Your office? She sounded confused. You mean the coffee shop where you work? No, I said, looking around my penthouse suite at Morgan Tower. My actual office. I'll text you the address. Morgan Tower? She laughed. Sarah, you can't just walk into Morgan Tower and pretend you have an office there. Security won't even let you in the lobby. I smiled, thinking of the building I purchased last year. Trust me, they will. Just be here at 9 a.m. And Malene, tell Mom and Dad to bring their mortgage papers. All of them. The next morning, I watched through my office windows as they pulled up in my father's aging sedan. Even from 30 stories up, I could see their confusion as the security guard directed them to the private elevator, the one that only went to the penthouse floor. My assistant buzzed the intercom. Your family is here, Ms. Harrison. Send them in, I said, turning to face the door. The looks on their faces as they entered my office were worth every second of the past 10 years. My father stopped mid-stride, his mouth hanging open. My mother grabbed the doorframe for support. Malene just kept blinking, as if expecting the scene to change. The office itself told the story of my success better than any words could. Original paintings worth millions adorned the walls. My desk was a restored Art Deco masterpiece that would make museum curators weep. And through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below us like a kingdom I'd quietly conquered. Sarah, my mother's voice was barely a whisper. What is this? This, I said calmly, is my office. Welcome to Harrison Fine Arts and Acquisitions. My father's face was doing that familiar red to purple transition. Impossible, you're a barista or something. You post about your apartment, your struggle. I walked over to a painting on the wall, a piece I discovered at a small estate sale for $500. That was now worth $2.3 million. Actually, I'm the owner and CEO of the largest private art dealership network in the country. Those social media posts, carefully crafted fiction. But, Malene was still struggling to form complete sentences. The Morgan Tower. This is mine, I finished for her. Well, technically, it belongs to my company, but since I own the company, that's when my father exploded. How dare you hide this from us? We're your family. All this time you've been secretly. Secretly what? I cut him off, my voice sharp. Secretly succeeding. Secretly building something amazing. Secretly proving you wrong about everything. I walked to my desk and sat down, letting the full weight of my positions sink in. Now, about that mortgage problem. The silence in my office was deafening. My father's face had gone from purple to an alarming shade of crimson as he processed what he was seeing. My mother kept running her fingers along the edge of my desk, as if trying to convince herself it was real. Malene just stood there, mouth slightly open, staring at the original Monet on my wall. I opened my laptop, pulled up my banking dashboard, and turned the screen toward them. Since we're being honest now, here's my current balance, all 236,542 of it. My mother actually gasped. My father's hand started shaking. Melina dropped her designer purse, the one she always bragged about at family gatherings. This is why you're here, I continued, pulling out a folder. You need help with the mortgage. 3 months behind, if I'm not mistaken. The bank is threatening foreclosure. How did you? Melina started. I own shares in that bank, I said flatly. I know everything about our family's finances. I know about Dad's failed investments, Mom's credit card debt, and your underwater real estate ventures, Melina. My father finally found his voice. You knew we were struggling and did nothing? Your own family. I stood up slowly, placing both hands on my desk. Remember the night you kicked me out. Don't come crawling back when you fail. Those were your exact words, weren't they? That was different, he sputtered. We were trying to protect you from making a huge mistake. No, I said firmly. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city I conquered while they weren't watching. For 10 years, I built this company from nothing. No help, no support, no encouragement from my family. Just hard work, determination, and the gift Grandma Rose left me. My mother's head snapped up. Rose, what did she believed in me, I cut her off. She saw what none of you could, that I had a vision worth believing in. She gave me the tools to start this journey, but I built this empire myself. I turned back to face them. Every holiday dinner, every family gathering, I listened to your subtle jabs. Still working at that little art shop, Sarah? When are you going to get a real job, Sarah? You could always come work for my company, Sarah. We need someone to handle the mailroom. Malene had the grace to blush at that last one. It had been her favorite dig at our last Christmas dinner. Now you need my help, I continued. Now suddenly I'm worth acknowledging. Now that you've seen my bank balance, I'm finally good enough to be part of this family. My father stood up straighter, his businessman persona taking over. We can discuss the past later. Right now, we need to talk about the mortgage. As your family, stop right there. I held up my hand. Let me show you something. I pressed a button on my desk and the large screen on the wall came to life. Financial documents appeared, bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios. This is everything, I said. Every debt, every failed investment, every financial mistake. The total amount needed to clear everything and put this family back on solid ground is exactly $2,400,000. My father's eyes lit up with hope. Malene started to smile. My mother reached for my hand across the desk. I pulled my hand back. I have that amount set aside in a separate account. I've had it set aside for years. Actually, every time you hit a rough patch, every time you nearly lost the house, I watched and waited. I wanted to see if any of you would ever try to actually fix things yourselves, but you never did, I continued. Instead, you took out more loans. You remortgaged the house. You borrowed from friends. You did everything except admit you needed to change. I sat back down at my desk. So here's what's going to happen. I will clear every debt. I will save the house. I will even set up a trust fund to ensure this family never faces financial hardship again. They all started to speak at once, but I held up my hand again. But there are conditions, I said firmly. First, Dad will retire. No more risky investments. No more trying to prove yourself. Second, Malene will close her failing real estate business and go back to school. I know you always wanted to be a teacher before Dad pushed you into business. Malene's eyes widened. I was the only one who remembered her original dream. Third, I continued, Mom will finally start that small bookstore she's always dreamed of. I'll provide the startup capital. My mother started crying quietly. She'd given up that dream 30 years ago to support Dad's business ambitions. And finally, I looked each of them in the eye. We're going to have weekly family therapy sessions. All of us. Because money isn't our only problem, and I'm tired of pretending it is. My father started to object, but my mother put her hand on his arm. We'll do it, she said softly. All of it. I nodded, then pressed another button on my desk. My assistant entered with a stack of documents. These papers make everything official, I explained. The debt clearance, the trust fund, the conditions, everything. Take them home, read them carefully. If you agree, sign them, and bring them back tomorrow. As they stood to leave, still looking shell-shocked, I added one more thing. And Dad, that thing you said 10 years ago, about me crawling back when I failed. He looked at me, his face a mixture of shame and regret. I never failed, I said quietly. I just succeeded without you. They left my office in silence, clutching the documents like lifelines. Through my window, I watched them get into their car and drive away. My assistant came in with a cup of tea. She always knew when I needed it. Are you okay? She asked gently. I thought about the past 10 years, the long nights, the hard work, the lonely holidays. But I also thought about the strength I found, the confidence I built, and the woman I've become. Yes, I said, smiling slightly. I think I finally am. The next day, they returned with the signed papers. We began the process of rebuilding, not just their finances, but our family. It wasn't easy. Years of resentment and hurt don't disappear overnight. But slowly, we started to heal. My father actually apologized, something I never thought I'd hear. My mother opened her bookstore, which became a beloved local landmark. Melina went back to school and now teaches art to elementary students. She's never been happier. As for me, I kept building my empire, but now I do it openly. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than I am. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't making others feel small. It's showing them how big you can become without their approval. My grandmother's old jewelry box sits on my desk now, a reminder of where it all began. Inside, there's still one piece I've never sold, a simple gold locket with her picture in it. On difficult days, I open it and remember her words. True art isn't just about creating beauty. It's about seeing value where others see nothing. She was right. And sometimes, the most valuable thing you can find is your own worth. At least that's what I thought until that Tuesday morning when I walked into my office and found my assistant pale, wide-eyed, holding a thick envelope with trembling hands. It came by regular mail. No return address, she said, almost whispering, before backing away to her desk as if the envelope were radioactive. I closed the door behind me, curious and suspicious. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside, I found an authenticated copy of my grandmother's will. Except it wasn't the same document that her lawyer had shown me 10 years ago. This version named another primary heir, my mother. There was a strange silence inside me, the kind that emerges when everything around you is calm, but your mind is on the verge of collapse. I read and reread the pages, looking for some clause, a date, a misspelled name. It was authentic. The notary's seal was there, the signatures too. My heart beat faster. I picked up the phone and called the lawyer who had been handling my business from the beginning. He answered on the third ring, as always. I need you here. Now. It's urgent. 40 minutes later, he was examining the document under the light in my office. Sarah, this is legitimate. But how? I asked, feeling my stomach twist. Grandma left everything to me. She gave me the key. She wrote that letter. This here. This contradicts everything. He took a deep breath. Wills can be updated. And this one is dated 3 months before her death. It's more recent. I looked out the window, the cloudy sky reflecting my mood. Can this be contested? I asked. It can. But if it's accepted as valid, technically, everything that came from that safe belongs to your mother. I swallowed hard. Everything. The jewelry, the initial capital, the locket, my company, my empire, the entire foundation of my life. Suddenly, the last few weeks began to make sense. My mother's sudden interest in visiting me at the office, the fake smiles, the phone calls just to see how you're doing. And now, this document. She knew. She waited for me to pay off all the family's debts, waited for me to become emotionally vulnerable, and then attacked. I felt a wave of nausea rise. I called Malene. She answered with a dragging voice. Sarah, Everything okay? Did you know? I shot back. Silence. Too long. Malene, answer me. She told me last week, she finally said. I swore I wouldn't tell you. She said she just wanted what was rightfully hers. She had 30 years to go after what was hers, I yelled. She never lifted a finger. She only showed up now because she knows what I built. On the other end of the line, silence. The worst possible answer. I hung up. My breathing was accelerated. I didn't know if I wanted to cry or destroy something. What my mother was doing was betrayal. But what hurt me more was that she knew how much this would hurt me, and did it anyway. And she didn't stop there. The next day, I received a legal notification, the first of many. She was filing a lawsuit to legally claim the entire fortune derived from the jewelry in the safe, with interest and monetary correction, and more. She was alleging that I had concealed her assets and enriched myself at the expense of what would be legitimate inheritance. My lawyer was livid. This is absurd. You were the direct heir in the original will. Her letter is proof. She gave you the key, not your mother. This won't hold up. But the damage was already done. The next day, the story appeared in the press. Art Empire CEO may have built fortune on stolen inheritance. My inbox was flooded with messages from reporters, curious onlookers, and, of course, art world speculators asking if my collections would be frozen. And in the middle of all this, a new message appeared on my phone. A number I hadn't saved, but I knew whose it was. You always thought you were better than us, Sarah. Now you'll learn that family can't be buried so easily. Mom, I felt my body freeze. The woman who once gave me an envelope with the key to my future now wanted to tear everything away from me with her own hands. And I swear, by everything I am, that I won't let this happen, even if I have to destroy my mother in the process. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment's living room, with the lights off, my phone beside me and the envelope still open on the coffee table. My mother's words kept echoing in my head. You always thought you were better than us. No, I never thought I was better. I just wanted the chance to be myself. And now she wanted to punish me for it. Punish me for having won. The next morning, I arrived at the office before everyone else. I went into the conference room and closed the curtains. I turned on my laptop and began organizing everything. Contracts, documents from the safe, original jewelry appraisals, my grandmother's letter, the asset transfer records. Everything that could prove that, yes, maybe the will had been updated, but it was my grandmother who gave me everything, while alive, with witnesses. I called my lawyer. I don't just want to defend myself, I said. I want to destroy her credibility before she destroys mine. He looked at me for a moment, as if considering advising me to go easy. But then he took a deep breath and said, Then let's go to war. The first thing I did was call a press conference. Yes, a press conference. If she wanted to drag me through the mud, then I would drag her with me. I spoke clearly, with my grandmother's letters digitized on the big screen, with the recording of the conversation I had with Marcus Chen, the antiquarian, talking about how my grandmother personally recommended him and that the box came to me while she was alive, not through a will. The press conference caused an uproar, but it wasn't enough. The following week, I was notified that my mother had obtained an injunction to freeze part of the company's assets, alleging that the business's growth occurred based on resources obtained illicitly. She claimed that everything, from the first gallery rent to the purchase of Morgan Tower, was the result of misappropriation. This wasn't just an attack on my image. It was an attempt to break me entirely. And then came the lowest blow. My mother went on television. Yes, live. Full interview in prime time, crying, saying that her ungrateful daughter stole the family legacy, that Grandma Rose had confided in her the desire to see the family united, but that I had always been cold, isolated, selfish. And she said it all with that soft martyr's voice, wiping her eyes with white tissues while the host sympathized with the mother betrayed by her own daughter. I almost threw up. I called Melina. She answered with a tense voice. Did you see it? I asked. I saw it, she replied. She rehearsed everything. The makeup, the phrases, even the background music. Sarah, she's going too far. This isn't right. And what are you going to do? I challenged. Stay silent again? I don't know. I hung up. I had no more patience for indecision. In the following days, I lost contracts. Investors withdrew support. Partner galleries asked for some time. Emails went unanswered. Phone calls turned to silence. It was as if my reputation was being slowly drained, like a punctured balloon. And all because of a woman who ignored me for years, and now appeared as a victim, while I, the real victim, was portrayed as the villain. But then I received an email from Marcus Chen. Subject: the recording. It was an audio file of a conversation between him and my mother from 2 months earlier. She had gone to the store, tried to convince him to publicly say that the jewelry had been donated to me by mistake, that my grandmother's intention was for everything to be divided between the daughters, that I had misinterpreted. He refused. Recorded everything. Sent it to me. I called my legal team. We're going to sue her for slander, defamation, attempted fraud, and malicious litigation. My lawyer smiled. With pleasure. On the same day, I filed a lawsuit against her. And for the first time since this all began, I was the one who attacked first. The press changed its tone. They began questioning the betrayed mother narrative. Malene called me. She wanted to talk. She used me too. Manipulated everyone. It's too late, Malene, I replied. I gave you so many chances. But she was crying, and for the first time sounded sincere. I want to testify in your favor. She forced me to lie. I saw Grandma's letter. She knew that was for you. She burned an older version where Grandma clearly said you were the only one with the vision to take care of the family legacy. That hit me like a stab. She didn't just sue me. She destroyed evidence. And then I knew she wasn't just greedy. She was cruel. But now I was armed and ready. The following week, we filed the new petition. Formal accusation, evidence, recordings, witnesses. Malene gave her statement. My lawyer read Grandma's letter in court. And me? I sat there looking at my mother on the opposite bench. For the first time, she was the one who looked away. Because for the first time, she knew she was going to lose. The trial dragged on for weeks. My mother hired the best lawyers that borrowed money could pay, because that's what she had now. Debts, appearances, and a blind faith that the public still saw her as the wronged mother. Except the truth began to seep through the cracks of her theater. In the final hearing, the judge asked for absolute silence before delivering the decision. Considering the facts presented, the original documents signed during the lifetime of the deceased Rose Harrison, the eyewitnesses and recordings brought to the case, this court recognizes that the inheritance was transferred to the defendant, Sarah Harrison, in a legitimate and conscious manner by the deceased. Any attempt at subsequent questioning is considered opportunistic and without legal basis. My heart stopped for a second. Furthermore, he continued, this court condemns the plaintiff, Mrs. Evelyn Harrison, for malicious litigation, attempted documentary fraud, and public defamation, the payment of compensation for moral damages, and the prohibition of any new attempt to claim the already transferred assets is determined. I didn't know whether to cry, laugh, or collapse into my lawyer's lap. All I felt was an immense weight dissolving from my shoulders. My mother left the courthouse with her face covered, escorted by silent lawyers. The press no longer followed her as before. Some headlines began calling her what she really was: manipulative, self-interested, fake. But what really shocked me was seeing my father waiting for her outside. He was wearing the same old coat as always, the one with the patched elbow and the tired look of a man who spent his entire life trying to appear to be something he wasn't. She tried to smile at him. He didn't smile back. I saw when he turned around and walked away alone. From that day forward, my mother disappeared from my life. No calls, no messages, nothing. I learned from sources that she sold everything she had to pay the fines and lawyers, that she moved to a small town in the interior, and that today she works in a small stationery store, far from everything, far from everyone. Malene, on the other hand, stayed close. She apologized countless times, said she didn't know how much she was being manipulated, that she let herself be blinded by envy and our father's demands. She seemed truly repentant. So one day I decided to visit her. She lived in a small apartment now, far from the ostentation of before. She received me with a shy hug. I was very wrong with you, Sarah. I know, but I was also wrong in thinking you were like her. We talked for hours. We talked about childhood, about Grandma Rose, about how we grew up trying to please a father who only recognized success when it came in the format he understood. And there, on that cramped sofa, drinking tea from a chipped mug, I realized that maybe, just maybe, part of my family could still be saved. In the following months, I returned to business with full force. Harrison Fine Arts and Acquisitions regained prestige. I closed international contracts, launched a new gallery in Paris. But something in me had changed. For the first time, it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about living in peace. Even so, in moments of silence, I still looked at Grandma Rose's locket on my desk. That piece I never sold. I opened it once on a Sunday afternoon, alone in my office, and noticed a small detail I had ignored all these years. On the back of her photo, there was an engraved phrase, almost erased by time. May you know when to fight and when to let go. I closed my eyes. I felt a tear roll down. I fought. I fought against abandonment, against shame, against suffocating expectations. I fought for myself, and now I was letting go. Months later, I received a letter, handwritten, no name on the return address. The envelope had familiar handwriting. My heart froze. I opened it. Sarah, I don't ask for forgiveness. I know I went too far. Maybe one day you'll understand what it's like to grow old with the feeling that life slipped through your fingers. You became everything I never managed to be. And that destroyed me. I just wanted you to know that, even after everything, when I see your name in the newspapers, I feel proud, even though I never deserved to say it out loud. Evelyn. I folded the letter carefully. I put it in the same box where Grandma's letters were kept. Maybe I'll never forgive. Maybe she'll never redeem herself. But now I have a choice. And that's the true freedom I built. Alone, from scratch, with pain, with art, and with value where no one else saw it.
My aunt said that adopted kids weren't real family and banned me from the reunion. Only blood relatives at the Anderson family gathering. She smiled. I smiled and opened the DNA test results. Funny you should mention blood, Aunt Karen. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that DNA can be thicker than both. Especially when it comes to family secrets. My name is Mel Anderson, and until 3 months ago, I thought being adopted was the biggest surprise of my life. I was wrong. I was adopted at birth by James and Maria Anderson, the most loving parents anyone could ask for. They never hid the fact that I was adopted. It was just part of our family story. Like Dad's terrible dad jokes or Mom's award-winning apple pie. Being adopted never made me feel less of an Anderson. At least not until Aunt Karen decided to make it an issue. It started when the invitations went out for the Anderson family grand reunion. Grandpa Anderson was turning 90, and the entire extended family was gathering at his sprawling farmhouse in Vermont for a week-long celebration. Cousins were flying in from across the country, uncles and aunts were taking time off work, and everyone was talking about making it the biggest family event in Anderson history. Everyone except Karen, that is. As Grandpa's oldest daughter and self-appointed guardian of the Anderson family legacy, she had taken charge of planning the reunion. And apparently she had some very specific ideas about who counted as family. I found out about her views during a family dinner at my parents' house. Karen was showing Mom the draft guest list, rambling about accommodations and meal plans. Of course, we'll need accurate numbers, she said, not quite looking at me. This is a gathering for true Andersons. Only blood relatives. The table went quiet. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. What exactly are you saying, Karen? Mom's voice had that dangerous edge I rarely heard. Well, Aunt Karen smoothed her designer blouse. You understand, don't you? This is about family heritage, about celebrating the Anderson bloodline. Michelle is lovely, of course, but she's not really an Anderson. Not really an Anderson. The words hit like a physical 28 years of family holidays, shared memories, love, and belonging, all dismissed because I didn't share their DNA. That's ridiculous. Dad started, but Aunt Karen cut him off. James, be reasonable. This isn't about feelings. It's about preserving our family's history. The reunion will feature a presentation about the Anderson genealogy, displays of family heirlooms, discussions about inherited traits. Michelle would feel out of place. The only one making Michelle feel out of place is you, Mom snapped, but Aunt Karen wasn't finished. Besides, I've already discussed it with the reunion committee. We all agree. Blood relatives only. It's simpler that way. The reunion committee consisted of Karen's daughter, Jessica, and 2 cousins who had never dared to disagree with her. I had grown up with Jessica, shared clothes and secrets through our teenage years, and now she couldn't even meet my eyes across the table. This is insane, Dad declared. If Michelle's not welcome, none of us are going. Don't be dramatic, James, Karen chided. You're the eldest son. You have to be there. And Maria's been helping Grandpa organize his old photographs for the family history display. You can't abandon your responsibilities just because Michelle's feelings are hurt. I found my voice. Then don't worry about it, Dad. I wouldn't want to taint the precious Anderson bloodline with my adopted presence. Michelle. My mom reached for my hand, but I was already standing. I mean it. Go to the reunion. Grandpa deserves to have his whole family there for his birthday. His real family. According to Aunt Karen, I left the house despite my parents' protests. Driving home to my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about all the little moments over the years when Karen had subtly emphasized my outsider status. The Christmas she gave all the grandkids family heirloom jewelry except me. The way she introduced me as James and Maria's adopted daughter rather than just her niece. But something else was bothering me. Something about the way she had been so insistent about blood relatives. Only it seemed excessive, even for Karen, like she was afraid of something. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the family photos Mom had been organizing for Grandpa's birthday. One in particular stuck in my mind. A faded Polaroid from a family picnic the year before I was adopted. Something about Karen's expression in that photo, the way she was standing apart from the group. The next morning I called in sick to my job at the architectural firm and drove to my parents' house. Mom was at work, but I had a key. The boxes of old photos were still spread across the dining room table. I found the picnic photo easily enough. Summer of 1994, 3 months before my birth parents chose the Andersons to adopt me. The whole family was there, lounging on checkered blankets, paper plates balanced on their laps. Everyone looked relaxed. In the old Polaroid, everyone looked relaxed and happy. Except Karen. She stood at the edge of the frame, one hand pressed against her stomach, her face turned away from the camera. She was wearing a loose sundress, unusual for someone who usually favored tailored clothes. And according to the date stamp, this was taken just 6 months before she married Uncle Steve in what Mom always called a rushed ceremony. A crazy idea started forming in my mind. I was born in January 1995. Karen married Steve in December 1994. The timing. But no, it couldn't be, could it? I took a photo of the Polaroid with my phone and opened my laptop. Over the next few hours, I dove deep into research. Hospital records from that time were mostly digitized now. It took some creative searching, but finally I found what I was looking for: a birth record from St. Mary's Hospital, January 15, 1995. My birth record. My birth mother's name was listed as Jane Doe, common in closed adoptions. But there was something else. A nurse's note, probably misfiled during digitization. Patient requested complete confidentiality. Family connection to hospital board member K.A. noted. K.A. Karen Anderson. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the website for a major DNA testing company. I'd always avoided these services before, respecting my birth parents' wish for privacy. But now the test kit arrived 2 days later. As I swabbed my cheek, I thought about Karen's insistence on blood relatives only at the reunion. About all the years of subtle digs and careful distance. About how she'd never once asked if I wanted to find my birth parents when most relatives had brought it up at least once. 6 weeks later, my phone pinged with the DNA results already. And that's when everything I thought I knew about family began to unravel. The DNA results loaded slowly, each new section revealing another piece of an impossible puzzle. First came the ethnic breakdown, predominantly Northern European, just like the Andersons. Then the health markers showing the same predisposition to high blood pressure that ran in the Anderson family. But it was the relative matches that made my heart stop. Close family matched Jessica Anderson estimated relationship half-siblings. Below that close family matched James Anderson estimated relationship father. My father wasn't my uncle. He was my father biologically, which meant Karen was my mother. The room started spinning. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and called Mom. Not my birth mother. My mom. The only mom who had ever mattered. Michelle, she answered on the first ring. What's wrong? I need you and Dad to come over now and bring that photo album from 1994. They arrived 20 minutes later, finding me still staring at my laptop screen. Without a word, I turned it to face them. Oh, God, Mom whispered, sinking onto my couch. Dad's face went pale. How long have you known? I asked. We didn't, Dad said quickly. Not for certain. We suspected, but Karen never confirmed it. Mom took my hand when we were chosen for adoption. We were told it was a closed adoption through the hospital. But the social worker, she hinted that there was a family connection. We thought maybe a distant relative. Then at the hospital, I saw Karen in the maternity ward. She said she was visiting a friend, but she begged us not to tell anyone. Dad continued. She said it would destroy her life, her chances with Steve. We agreed because we wanted you so badly. And we were afraid that if we didn't, she'd change her mind. I swallowed hard. The pieces were falling into place. Karen's distance, her insistence on keeping me separate from real family events, her obsession with bloodlines and heritage. We should have told you. Mom was crying now, but as the years passed, it seemed kinder not to. You were ours.
Completely ours.
The how didn't matter. I looked at them. These parents who had chosen me, loved me, protected me even from the truth. Does Grandpa know? I asked. Dad shook his head. I don't think so. Karen told everyone she was staying with a cousin in Maine during that time. I looked at the reunion invitation still sitting on my coffee table. The Anderson family grand reunion was starting in 3 days. Karen's carefully orchestrated celebration of family history was about to become something very different. I'm going, I announced. Michelle, Mom started.
No.
I shook my head. I'm tired of hiding who I am, of being made to feel less than. Karen wants to celebrate Anderson blood.
Fine.
Let's celebrate it. The reunion was in full swing when we arrived at Grandpa's farm. Cars lined the long driveway, kids ran across the sprawling lawn, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. A large banner proclaimed "Welcome Anderson Family." Karen's perfect calligraphy. She spotted us immediately, her face darkening. I thought we discussed this, she said, stepping forward to block our path. This gathering is for blood relatives only. Karen crossed her arms over her chest, wearing that haughty expression she always used when asserting her authority over the family. But this time, I didn't feel intimidated. She had excluded me for years, but now I knew the truth. I have just as much right to be here as anyone else, I said firmly. She let out a dry, humorless laugh filled with disdain. Oh, really? And since when do bastards count as legitimate family members? Heat rushed to my face so fast that my fists clenched involuntarily. My father, my real father, stiffened beside me, and my mother grabbed my arm as if she knew I was on the verge of losing control. Bastard, I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. You have the audacity to call me that after hiding from everyone that I'm your daughter? The silence around us grew heavy. People who had been chatting and laughing around the farmhouse began to take notice. I saw Jessica, my half-sister, standing a few feet behind Karen, her eyes wide in confusion. What are you talking about? Karen tried to keep her composure, but I noticed the slight tremor in her hands. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the DNA test results, turning the screen toward her. This is what I'm talking about. My genes don't lie, Karen. You may have fooled everyone for almost 30 years, but science doesn't fail. She stared at the screen, and for a brief moment, I saw the horror in her eyes. But Karen was good at masking her emotions. She forced out a laugh, though her voice was shaky. This is ridiculous. You must have faked this somehow. I wouldn't fake a DNA test. But you know who did fake something for nearly 3 decades? You. Jessica stepped forward, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. Mom, what is she saying? This can't be true, right? Karen turned to her daughter, and for the first time, I saw something close to panic in her eyes. I took my chance. I'll tell you what's true, Jessica. Your mother got pregnant when she was 20 and decided to keep it a secret. She didn't want it to ruin her marriage to Steve, so she gave me up for adoption. But she couldn't leave me with just anyone, so she placed me within the family. Guess who my real father is? Jessica blinked rapidly, looking from her mother to my father, our father. James Anderson. Dad, she whispered, her voice breaking. My father said nothing, but his face darkened, his lips pressed into a tense line. He had always been a calm man, but now he looked like he was barely holding himself together. This can't be, Jessica murmured, stepping back. Karen finally reached for her daughter. Sweetheart, don't listen to this girl. She's just trying to stir up trouble. Trouble. I let out a bitter laugh. You destroyed my life. You spent years treating me like an outsider, excluding me, making me feel like I was never enough, and now that the truth is out, you want to act like I'm the villain. Karen snapped. I did what I had to do. I saved my marriage. And you destroyed my identity in the process. I shot back. You never treated me like family because, deep down, seeing my face reminded you of what you did, didn't it? Of what you abandoned. You chose to push me away instead of dealing with your own guilt. The guests around us were shifting uncomfortably. My uncles, aunts, and even Grandpa Anderson stood there, watching, unsure of what to say. Jessica still looked shaken, her eyes filling with tears. You knew, Mom? You knew and never told me? Of course not, honey, Karen insisted, her voice trembling. She's lying. I pulled out my phone again and reopened the DNA test results. If I'm lying, then prove it. Here's the evidence. Here's the bloodline you love so much, Karen. She froze. She had no argument against science. Jessica took another step back, as if seeing her mother for the first time. Oh my God, it's true. Karen reached for her again. Jessica, please. Don't touch me. Jessica pulled away. You lied to me. You always told me that family was everything, that blood was what mattered most, and now we find out that you hid your own daughter. Karen was beginning to hyperventilate. I watched as her face paled, her eyes darting between Jessica, me, and the crowd around us. She was losing control. I did it for us.
No, Mom.
You did it for yourself. I turned to my father, who had remained silent, watching the chaos unfold. You knew, I said, my voice quieter now. You suspected, but you never told me. My father swallowed hard. I swear, I thought we were doing the right thing. The right thing? My voice cracked. The right thing would have been telling me the truth. The right thing would have been treating me like your daughter instead of a family secret. The murmurs around us grew louder. My uncles and cousins exchanged uneasy glances. The Anderson family, the one that had always prided itself on being so tight-knit, was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Grandpa Anderson finally stepped forward, leaning on his cane.
Karen.
Is this true? She didn't answer. Her silence was all the confirmation anyone needed. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. Freedom. You know what? Thank you, Karen. Because it was your arrogance, your insistence on excluding me, that led me to the truth. You tried to erase me from this family's history, but now, everyone knows exactly who I am. Karen had no words. For the first time in her life, she had no response. And for the first time in my life, I finally felt like I belonged. The silence after the revelation was overwhelming. Karen remained motionless, her skin so pale she looked like she might faint. Jessica couldn't stop staring at her, as if she were seeing her mother for the first time. My father was still tense, as if he knew that nothing he said could erase what had just happened. And me? I was burning inside. After years of being treated like an outsider, as if I had never truly been an Anderson, everything finally made sense. Karen despised me because I was a living reminder of her dirty secret. And yet, she had the audacity to try and ban me from this reunion? She wanted so badly to celebrate the Anderson blood? Very well. She would get exactly that. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, making sure my voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. I really must thank you all for coming today. After all, this is a very special occasion. The Anderson family gathered to celebrate its origins, to remember our roots. Karen flinched, realizing where I was going with this. Mel, that's enough, she whispered, but I wasn't stopping now. Enough? I smiled, but there wasn't a trace of humor on my face. Enough is what you told me when you decided I wasn't part of this family. Enough is what you told me my entire life. Well, now it's my turn to say, enough with the lies. I turned to the rest of the family, who were still digesting the shock. You spent all these years looking at me with pity, as if I were a burden my parents took in out of charity. But guess what? I'm more of an Anderson than many of you. That doesn't mean anything. Karen tried to cut in, her voice higher-pitched than usual. A DNA test doesn't define a family. Funny, coming from you, I shot back, crossing my arms. You spent years preaching that blood is what matters. And now, suddenly, it doesn't? How convenient. This doesn't change anything, she insisted, trying to regain her composure. Oh, I think it changes a lot. I looked around. Because if you all really believe everything Karen has said about family, about lineage, then you must be wondering what else she has lied to you about. The eyes of my uncles and cousins narrowed. Some glanced at Karen with distrust. Others whispered among themselves. Grandpa Anderson was the one who broke the silence. Karen, he began, his voice hoarse and tired. Why did you never tell us? Karen blinked rapidly, as if searching for an answer. I did what I thought was best for everyone. For me, for Steve, for the family. I was young. I didn't know what to do. Jessica let out a short, bitter laugh. Didn't know what to do? So you decided to lie to everyone? Karen turned to her daughter, the desperation now showing on her face. Sweetheart, I did this for you too. I wanted you to have a life without scandals. I wanted to protect our family. You lied to me my entire life. Jessica interrupted. And now you expect me to just accept this? Sweetheart, please. Don't call me sweetheart. Jessica took a step back, moving away from her mother. You spent years teaching me that family is about loyalty, about trust. And now I find out that you have a hidden daughter? That you abandoned my sister? Karen reached out for Jessica, but she pulled away. My father, on the other hand, had remained silent. Until, finally, he looked at Karen and spoke. You knew I was the father? Karen froze.
What?
You knew I was the father from the start? Her expression changed. For a brief moment, I saw something in her face, fear. And that's when it hit me. My God, you knew. But you never told him. Shock washed over my father's face. Karen, you took my daughter away from me. That's not how it was. She shouted, her voice shaking. You couldn't know. You would have wanted to do the right thing, to take responsibility, and I couldn't let that happen. My father closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. You couldn't let it happen? I spent my entire life thinking I was just the older brother who helped raise his adoptive niece. And now I find out that I've spent nearly 30 years not knowing that my own daughter was right there the whole time. Karen was desperately trying to find the right words, but nothing she said could fix what she had done now. I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. So that's it. You didn't reject me because I was adopted. You rejected me because deep down, you knew I belonged here. That if I ever found out the truth, you would lose everything. She said nothing. And guess what?
Now you have.
Karen looked around, as if expecting someone to speak in her defense. But no one did. Steve, her husband, stood on the house porch, his face pale. He, too, looked like he had just learned the truth. Steve, she tried to call out to him. He took a step back. I need some time. Karen stumbled, as if she had been physically struck. Grandpa Anderson cleared his throat. I think this conversation has gone on long enough. But there's one thing I need to make clear. Everyone turned to look at him. The Anderson family does not exclude anyone, least of all my granddaughter. My chest tightened at those words. You have always been part of this family, Mel, Grandpa continued. And it is a mistake that it took this long for it to be recognized. Karen took a step forward.
Dad, no.
You disgrace me, Karen.
His words hit her like a slap.
Her face twisted in shock and humiliation. I just wanted to protect the family. You wanted to protect yourself. Grandpa shot back. But now, everyone knows the truth. And it's up to each of them to decide what to do with it. Silence fell over the gathering. Karen looked around one last time, realized there was no one left to defend her, and lowered her head. I watched her as she turned and walked away. For the first time in her life, she was the outsider. And me? I had finally gotten my revenge. Karen was gone. No one followed her. No one defended her. The woman who had spent decades imposing her rules, deciding who was worthy of being called an Anderson and who wasn't, now found herself completely alone. And for the first time in her life, she was no longer in control. I felt something inside me loosen, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. But it wasn't a feeling of triumph. It wasn't just the satisfaction of seeing Karen get what she deserved. It was something much deeper. It was the end of a life where I had to justify my own existence, prove that I had the right to be here. My father, my real father, James Anderson, still stood there, his face filled with devastation. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in just a few minutes. His expression was one of someone who had just realized he had lost an entire lifetime with his own daughter. Mel. His voice cracked as he ran a hand down his face, exhausted. I can't ask you to forgive me. I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him that he should have protected me, that he should have known the truth. But looking at him now, with guilt etched into every line of his face, I realized something. Anger wouldn't change the past. You should have asked questions. My voice was firm, but the fire that had burned inside me earlier had cooled. You should have figured it out. You should have known. He lowered his head and nodded slowly. I know. And for the first time, I truly saw him. Not as the man who had always called me his niece, but as a father who had just discovered that he had missed almost 30 years of his daughter's life. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him, but I knew I wanted to get to know him. I took a small step toward him and let out a breath. I can't promise I'll get over this anytime soon, but I'm willing to try. My father's eyes welled up with tears, and he nodded, his voice breaking. That means more than you know. Before I could say anything else, I felt someone step closer. Jessica, my sister. She looked different. The arrogance she had always carried, the superiority she had inherited from Karen, was gone. Instead, I saw uncertainty, guilt, and a deep sadness. She hesitated before speaking, her voice shaky. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted, but I want to try. If you'll let me. I studied her for a moment. For years, Jessica had been the perfect daughter, the one who fit into the idealized version of family that Karen had created. But now, that illusion had shattered. And in the end, all we had left was the truth. I want to try too. And for the first time in my life, I hugged my sister. The rest of the night passed in a blur of emotions. After Karen left, the atmosphere at the reunion shifted. My uncles and cousins approached me, some to apologize, others simply to really get to know me. Grandpa Anderson insisted that my name be officially added to the family records. Never again will we allow someone to be excluded, he said firmly. My mother, my real mother, Maria, never left my side. She had stayed silent through everything, but when we were finally alone, she took my hands and looked me straight in the eyes. I know today has been overwhelming for you, but I need you to know none of this changes how I feel about you. You have always been my daughter. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I know, Mom, and I always will be. She pulled me into a tight hug, as if afraid that after all this, I might slip away from her. But I never would. She was my mother. She always had been. And Karen? She disappeared. After that night, she cut ties with the entire family. No one knew exactly where she went, and most didn't care to find out. She had exiled herself. Her marriage to Steve didn't survive. He couldn't forgive the fact that she had lied to him for their entire life together. The image he had of her, of a strong, principled woman, had shattered completely. Jessica tried to contact her after a few weeks. She never got a response. And honestly, that was probably for the best. Karen had spent her whole life trying to erase my existence. Now, fate had made her the one who disappeared. And me? For so long, I wondered who I was. Was I the adopted daughter? The niece? The outsider?
But now I knew.
I am Mel Anderson, daughter of James and Maria Anderson, sister to Jessica, granddaughter of Grandpa Anderson.
Part of this family.
I should have never had to fight for a place that was always mine. I should have never felt like I needed to justify my existence. But finally, no one could deny it anymore. The past couldn't be changed. The pain, the lies, the lost years, they couldn't be erased. But the future was mine now. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I belonged.